Welcome to the podcast, where we teach you how to create marketing that pops. Get ready for refreshing conversations with industry experts, trendsetters, and creative minds that'll leave you bubbling with inspiration. Get ready to turn up the volume on your business. Let's get popping. Okay, welcome back to Marketing That Pops. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Michelle.
And we are going to be talking about branding today. ThrivePOP has a lot of services that we provide, but we really love branding. I think it's probably one of our favorite services that we provide. Wouldn't you say, Michelle?
Yes, definitely. And I think it's really one of our areas of expertise that we really are super passionate about. And we love doing it just because we can be so creative with it.
Mm-hmm. And so this month, we've been talking about branding on social media and in our newsletter. And so we thought we'd bring it to the podcast as well and kind of take you through some of the steps that you would need to have a successful brand. And then at the end of this episode, we will have a download available for you guys so that you can use this branding checklist or kind of guide to take you through you can make sure that your branding is on point, quote unquote.
Yes.
So I think with any brand, you have to start with the foundation. And there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. But I would say you should start with your mission statement. I think that kind of helps to kind of define your brand and really kind of hone in on who you are before you start to decide visually how you're going to display yourself. So I would say start with the mission statement so that you can kind of define the purpose of your company and, what you're really trying to aim to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I met with a prospect yesterday and he was saying they had just got their license. They started they bought the building. They didn't even know what their name was going to be. And they didn't have a business plan even, and so one thing that we also do is just help create the name, and really try to encompass your story into your name, into your brand and everything. So for example, ThrivePOP, a lot of people ask us, how did we come up with this name?
Mm-hmm.
It took a while to figure it out because I couldn't find the right words for it. And then I started thinking about what is it that I really like to do, and really it's help businesses grow and thrive. And with any advertising, we're wanting it to pop, it really is going to jump off the page and get your attention. So that's really why we came up with that name. And, we're always hearing, oh my gosh, I love your name. It's so fun. And that's really what we wanted to have come through in our name and in our branding. So.
Yes, because we like to thrive and pop.
Pop, pop.
So after I would say your mission statement, and honestly, all of these kind of coincide together, but mission statement, vision statement, obviously core values. And then once you have that kind of nest of those things together, then you can kind of figure out what your brand's personality is. And we always kind of talk about this, but kind of personifying your brand as a person and humanizing it. What are the characteristics of your brand? All of those things can kind of help when you're coming to an agency or, even trying to come up with the stuff on your own. It's when I'm thinking about my brand, what are the colors that come to my mind? If I'm thinking that my brand is light and airy, maybe it's more pastel colors and you want a logo that's very fluid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so mission statement, vision statement, core values, and then brand personality.
Yeah. I would say tone of voice too. I don't know if you're gonna get to that later, but that's really important because when people go to your website, you want them to feel like somebody's just talking to you and it's not all fluff, that it's like real,
Yeah,
that it's transparent and like that, okay, I get what these people are like before I even talk to them in person.
exactly. I love when I go to a brand's website or like I'm looking at their social media or anything, and you're like, oh, I clearly know. But like, even if it's not my demographic, like you can tell, like, oh, I know exactly who they're going for. Like, this is so clearly them. I just love that because maybe I'm in marketing. I'm like, you're doing it right. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that, as long as we're talking about
Yeah,
website for a
yeah,
sec, is that sometimes I've seen companies have websites and they don't even say what they do, like on the home. And it's
mhm,
like, dude, I can't even figure out what you do. Like, if
yeah,
I know, like, I mean, you have to just straight out just tell people like it is, like, we do this. And you're going to have much better results. And plus, that's what people are looking for.
yeah. I've gone to websites and it's like, this could be like the most beautiful website, but I have no idea how to, first of all, how to navigate this. Second of all, where I can't find anything. Who are you? Like, this isn't matching. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
geez, make sure you're consistent, which I will get to that in a second. But the next thing I would say is kind of the fun part, which is the visual identity. So, this is where you would come up with like the logo, the color palette, the typography, imagery, and then like the key elements. A good example for this is like, I mean, we could use ThrivePOP for an example, because we actually just went through a rebranding. So we are. It's been so fun to kind of just see the evolution of ThrivePOP anyway. But right now we are really into the pinks and the oranges, and I just think that that speaks to ThrivePOP so much, especially where we're at today.
Mhm.
But then the typography, like making sure that you're choosing a font that really goes with your brand. Like, does it have like more curly cues? You'll notice that our new typography that we're using, it has that because we are fun and we pop. um and then there's also like the key elements. So I would say key elements are like those, it's not just a logo, it's those extra things that kind of come together so that you have a full brand. So for ThrivePOP, we do have a new logo, but then we have some other things that we are using, I'd say, as our key elements. So we have these kind of like stars that we're using, sparkles, if you will, that you'll kind of start to see a little bit more in our branding and like in our newsletters and just little things that we are doing. So I would say that that is like a nice little like key element. Do you have any other that you could think of as a good example, Michelle?
um, I was gonna say like the different elements are good, but if say you have a logo and it has just a mark. So for example, I like to use Target as an example.
Yeah.
So you don't need, when you see their mark, you already know who that is
Yeah.
because you have such great branding, right? And you know that there's going to be red accents like in the store when you go in there and
Mhm.
like everything's red, right? And so those are the things to like keep in mind because I think it's always like really important to have the logo, but then also some type of icon or mark or things that you can use in small spaces.
Mhm.
So, for example, like in your URL in your website, or
Mhm.
sometimes on social media, like you have a little square spot and you're supposed to put your logo in there, but maybe your logo is like horizontal and it just doesn't work for that, right?
Mhm.
So that's those are some other good examples just to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is think about how many colors you want to, because it can get really expensive if you're going to print with things and you have 6 different colors and you want them all, in this particular piece. Either we do 4-color process, but if we're doing spot color, it can get really expensive. And so I'd always recommend like a full color, maybe a 2-color and a black logo, just for some versatility of what.
Yeah. And Michelle kind of touched on this a little bit, but having the different options for your logo. So like maybe you have a stacked version, maybe you have a horizontal version, maybe you have one that's just the mark. Because there's so many times we've run into, it's like, this doesn't fit here. Like, oh, let's use the stacked, or maybe you're using the mark in this place, or like I was saying, those other key elements kind of can come into play. Obviously brands like the big ones like Nike and Adidas, like they do it really well because they can use their mark in so many different ways along with like their tagline. And I mean, you can use it multiple times like on things. So you really have to think about it when it comes to branding. And I think that's why we love it so much, because it's like, ooh, I can see doing this and this with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And also like taglines too, like talking about Nike, like theirs is just do it. Right. And so like people could see just do it and they would know.
Yeah, instantly.
That's Nike, And so thinking not everybody has to have a tagline, but I think it is helpful just to kind of pull all the pieces together and, in a situation of explaining what you do, right? Or kind of the thought behind that, just do it. It's like, yeah, like get out there, exercise, use these tennis shoes to get it done.
Yes. Michelle always knows when I'm going to the next thing, which is messaging and communication. So yes, a tagline. A tagline is just a short and memorable phrase that captures your brand's essence. So make sure that you choose something that is memorable to you. Like Michelle said, not everybody has to have a tagline, but if you do choose to, make sure that it's something short and memorable. And then she also touched on brand voice. So the tone and style of your brand's voice and like the verbal communication in which you talk to your clients or potential people in the world. That's very important. And we have had a few episodes about brand voice. So we can link those below for you and make sure you go check that out, because brand voice is very, very important.
Yeah. And I think that like when we're talking about the brand voice, we need to think about who is our audience, because if you personally want it to be a certain way, but that's not going to connect with your customers, then you have to rethink it, right? You just have to talk like, you think that they like to communicate. So
yeah, I think that's where a lot of businesses can fail at times, is they know how they, either two things. It could be that their voice of how they're trying to portray themselves is not connecting, because maybe they're going after the wrong demographic for their actual product, or two, it's that it's just not matching up at all and they just don't have a good brand voice. So it's very important. Tone, style, channels that you use it in. So yes. And that was my next point, which was communication channels, the platforms and mediums used to reach your target audience. So you have to switch it up based on the platforms that you use it on. We've talked about this a lot too, of, maybe in the newsletter, you're speaking directly to your audience and you have subscribers. And so they know you. So you can be a little bit more yourself, or you can like really hone into that voice. Whereas like maybe if you're in a publication, you might want to, still have your tone of voice, but you got to cater it to whatever platform that might be.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of off track, but I think it's really just so everybody knows, like, I never know what we're going to talk about until like the time when we record. And then Olivia will tell me, oh, hey, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so I don't even know like what she has in her agenda. And I think it's funny that I always bring up this stuff and then they'll like Michelle said. So I thought it was funny.
I know. We really just need to have a disclaimer on here on the front of every episode of Michelle doesn't know what's going to be talked about, guys. So just know that.
Let's see what she says. What is she going to come up with this time?
Okay, so let's see if Michelle knows the next thing I'm going to talk about. It is brand consistency. So, we've talked about this too, which you have to be consistent with your branding. Once you come together and you've decided like this is the tone of voice that we want to go after, and this is the color palette, and this is the logo, you got to stick to it. You can't be like throwing in these crazy, switching up the colors and all this stuff, because what you're trying to do is have your audience know exactly who you are and be able to call you out in the midst of everyone else. You want them to know like, yes, this is this brand. So having brand guidelines is very important. It's a good tool for many different reasons, especially if you're in a larger corporation, so that, there's rules and standards in which your brand is adhering to. It's also good for like employee training. So like if you are onboarding some new employees and educating them on, the company at large, and also like it's a good opportunity for you to like kind of go over those brand values as well, and how it represents and like the consistency that you're trying to have. And then it's also good for brand monitoring. So like tracking how your brand is being perceived throughout the different channels. So like those other channels that we just talked about. So making sure that you're being consistent on all of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like something we always talk about with our clients are whether you're on the website or the social or in the actual location, it all needs to be cohesive. Exactly. And if you like walk into their physical store and it's like, well, am I in the right spot? Because this doesn't look like their website and their social media. It's like a whole different style, like what's going on. And so I think that's really important, especially if you do have a brick and mortar store. Like you really want to make sure that when you're designing the layout and the colors and everything, that it really is like adhering to your brand guidelines.
So many times I've seen it where like businesses have like a very like modern and sleek aesthetic within their like physical location, but then when you are looking on their social media, it's like, well, I didn't know that I was going to get this type of experience going in here. Like, and of course, I don't know if this is just me because I'm a marketer, but I'm just like, you need me to help you. This is not matching. What's going on here?
I know. And then sometimes they're so proud of what they have going on, but it's like, well, that's not what your website looks like.
Yeah, like this.
If this really like your style, we need to switch up a lot, know, like on your social and your website and, everything else that you do. It makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say you have had a logo for a while, or you've been in the game for a minute maybe it's time to kind of freshen things up. So it's very interesting. And as I've seen, obviously I just talked about how we've gone through a rebrand, but also how different brands will go through kind of like that evolution, and like they'll tweak certain things, or maybe they'll change up the typography or just like the font choices that they're using, and how much it can impact a brand. Like I've seen, like I think Poppy Drinks is like a good example. Before they had kind of like just a more simple and laid back kind of style on their cans and everything, but then they like rebranded and they got a new logo, and they really didn't change too much, but now the colors are like way more vibrant, and I think it's just it just all kind of coincides. And obviously you can see that they're kind of blowing up. I mean, they had a little bit of controversy just happened just a little bit ago, but regardless of that, like they're killing it.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's fun to see people using the word pop too.
oh, I know.
Love that.
So I'd say staying up to like industry trends and like how and customers' preferences is a good way to kind of figure out if it's time to like revamp your brand. Um, and then also, I would say understanding like your competitor strengths and weaknesses. That's another way that you can kind of see where you can fill in the gaps if you are going to go through like a brand evolution, I'd say. Um, for instance, like maybe someone else in the industry is really killing it. And it's like, why is it that they are doing so much better? Is it that they're being more consistent? Like, how can we be better and fill in those gaps in our own way?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that every brand needs to kind of adapt as the years go on. I mean, can you imagine if like all these brands just had the same logo that they had 50 years ago? I mean, some of them are very similar, but they elevate. You
Mm-hmm.
refine, you tweak, and I kind
Yeah.
of like it when brands do that. Like, what was that car brand? Like, is it Hyundai? Or no, Kia, they had like a whole new logo, and it's so sleek now. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about Kias, and now I'm like, do I want a Kia?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because like you say, like it portrays, like if it is sleek,
Mm-hmm.
that mean they're trying to elevate it to where it's more luxury versus affordable, So that's interesting.
Yeah, I never thought Kias were cute. And now here we are. Okay, so additional considerations I'd say are brand protection. So let's say you do all this work. One thing that you could do and probably should do is register your trademarks for like copyrights, and so you can protect your brand's like identity and who you are. Uh, I know a lot of brands, especially bigger corporations, I think that's a good thing to do. And then when thinking about like brand partnerships, when you're collaborating, figure out how you can expand your reach and offer value to your customers. So thinking about like what brand partnerships you can do. And then I also would say social responsibility. So demonstrating your brand's commitment to like ethical and sustainable practices. I think that is another consideration if you are going through like a rebrand of like, how can I demonstrate that my brand's commitment to whatever you want to attach yourself to?
hmm hmm Yeah, and I would say, just think about like what are you passionate about, and like as the owner, and like then it's going to mean a lot more if it is something you're passionate about.
Yes, absolutely. So that's kind of it. That's my list. It's very high level. Obviously, if you want to get into the minutia of all of it, you got to work with ThrivePOP.
That's right. And we have some cool things to download, right?
Absolutely. So, if you like this conversation, or if you're going through a rebrand, or if you're like, I think my brand is pretty good, but I'm not quite sure if I have all the pieces. We have this branding checklist that will kind of take you through what we talked about today. And then just also some other things like thinking about like internal marketing, like, do I have all of those pieces together? Like my email signature, email templates, and like things that can just kind of escape your mind until you need it. And then you're like, oh yeah, now I gotta like go and create this. So definitely go and download our branding checklist. We'll have that link below for you. And then we'll also link our brand voice. Because I think we have a template for that too, if you want to kind of go through that and see, is my brand voice good? Do I know what I'm talking about? Do people know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so check that out. And you guys got to give us 5 stars.
Come on, man. Like we need some reviews. We need some love.
Yes.
We're doing a good job here. Or if we're not, we want to know that too. If we suck, tell us.
I don't know if I want to know that, but okay. I will accept the feedback.
Yeah, I don't listen to this because I don't want to hear my voice. So I might totally suck. I don't know.
No. Well, thank you for listening, and we will check you on the next episode.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening with us today. Stay tuned for the latest in web marketing and design from ThrivePOP. Want to be a pop star? Head over to thrivepop.com/podcast to join our mailing list for episode notifications, sneak peeks, listener feedback, and more.